All right, what's up, everybody? Hutch here, and we're on Module 11, Lesson 2, which is complementary and supplementary angles. And so, two new vocabulary words for you. This lesson is going to be pretty sweet for you because, honestly, we really did this in Lesson 1. So it'll be a nice review. We're just adding some new vocabulary words. So the thing that I want you to see is with the word complementary, okay, we're making the C stand out, and complementary goes with the word corner, meaning complementary angles are the two angles that create 90 degrees, okay? So they complement each other, right? So these two angles are complementary because they make 90 degrees. Supplementary angles, okay, notice the S, supplementary angles form a straight line, and we know a straight line is 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and label this complementary, make 90 degrees. Supplementary, if we draw your big arc here, make 180 degrees. Okay, so that's your trick of remembering: complementary corner, supplementary straight. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve some equations with this. So example 1, sometimes they might just give you an angle. And so in this case, they said, hey, we got angle 60 here. What is the complement, or what's the complementary angle to that? And we know it's this other piece that would create a 90-degree angle. Okay, so what is that? Well, 60, 70, 80, 90. So the complementary angle is 30 degrees. Okay, and so you can see here it says because x is 30, the measure of angle complementary to 60 degrees angles is 30 degrees. Okay, and so the equation for that would have been the 60 plus something equals 90 degrees, and that's how we would find the complementary. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. It says select the angle that is complementary to the given angle. So they're giving you 23 degrees. And so remember, complementary is corner. So we're just wondering, well, what is the other piece that would make 90 degrees total? Okay, and so we have the equation 23 plus something equals 90 degrees, or 90 minus 23. And what do you get with 90 minus 23? Well, 90 minus 23 equals a 67-degree angle. So that other complementary angle is B, 67 degrees. All right, let's go ahead and take a look down here. So you can see very similar to what we were doing before. Let's go ahead and take a look at, they're giving us an angle name. So they're saying angle BAC. Okay. And angle something, something, something are complementary and have the sum of 90. So what's the complementary? Well, it's angle CAD. Those are the complementary angles that, if you put them together, make 90 degrees. So what would the equation be? Well, we know our equation would be the 9x plus the 36, and both those together, because they're complementary, they equal 90 degrees. So we can go ahead and solve for x. Okay, and with solving for x, we have subtract 36 from both sides. Go ahead and do 90 minus 36, and we have 54. So this crosses out. We have 9x equals 54. And then let's isolate the variable, solve for x. Divide both sides by 9 like we normally would, and we end up with x equals 9 times what is 54? 6 times 9 is 54. Always good to double check on your calculator. There you go. And oops. And x equals 6. Okay, so we solved the equation and found what x is. Now, let's be clear though, okay? If x is 6, that doesn't mean that our complementary angle is 6. 6 times 9 is 54. Okay, so we have 54 degrees for that angle. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at example 2. Use complementary angles to find the missing value. And when they say missing value, they want you to find x, okay, not the actual angle. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. We know that these two are complementary because they form a 90 degree. We can see the box here. Okay, so there's my total. So let's create your equation. We have 28 plus the 2x equals 90. Okay, and we could write it in there. I'm just writing it out here so we can actually go ahead and solve from that spot. Okay, so let's go ahead and isolate the variable. We're solving a variable, so opposite order of operations, or SADMERG. So minus 28 to both sides. Cross that out, and we end up with 2x equals 90 minus 28 is 62. Let's isolate our variable. So divide both sides by 2, and we have x equals half of 62, should be 31. Yep, there we go. X equals 31. So we've solved for x. Okay, and if I want to see what it actually was, x is 31. I could put 31 in for x. 31 times 2 is 64. Okay, or 62, sorry. But we just need to solve for x. We don't need to write 62 degrees. All right, go ahead and try this out. You can pause and see how you do, and then unpause and check your work. All right, so we write our equation. Again, I'm going to make note that this whole thing is 90 degrees. That tells me my total. So my equation is 8x plus 10 degrees equals 90 degrees. Separate our workspace. And let's go ahead and solve for x. So subtract 10 on both sides. We're going to do our opposite order of operations. And we have 8x equals 80. Then we can go ahead and divide both sides by 8. And we end up with x equals 80 divided by 8 is 10. Okay, because 10 times 8 is 80. And there we go. We solved for x. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to supplementary. Remember, supplementary, we say straight. Okay, so it's two angles that create a straight line, and we know that straight line is 180 degrees. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and practice some of these out. So first, they're just saying we have an angle of 135 degrees. What is the supplementary angle? And so if I extend this out, this is what we're wondering. What is this angle right here that would create 180 degrees? Okay, so let's go ahead and create our equation. So we have 135 plus the mystery angle, and we know it has to equal 180 degrees. We can go ahead and solve for x, which we know is just simply doing 180 minus 135. Okay, so you can see that there. If that's what you're thinking of doing anyway, that's accurate, but this is the algebraic way of writing the initial equation first. And then 180 minus 135 is going to be 45 degrees. Okay, so x is 45 degrees. Let's see if that makes sense. 135 plus 45 should be 180. Yep, it is. So what is the sum of the angle measures of supplementary angles? Well, we know the sum of the supplementary angles is 180 degrees. And what is x? X is 45. All right, so what is the angle measure of the angle that is supplemental to 67? So your first thing to visualize it is just extend out your line, okay, and mark your variable here. So we're wondering, we know both of those total 180 degrees. So what is that angle? So you know that you could just do 180 minus 67 to solve that missing piece, or it could look like this: x plus 67 equals 180, and you're going to get to that same thing. So minus 67 minus 67, and you end up with x equals whatever that is. 180 minus 67 is 113. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. So learn how to use supplementary angles to find missing values. We've really just been doing this. I think you could tackle this just fine. So the first thing, though, is we've learned about vertical angles and complementary angles and supplementary angles and adjacent things. Well, these are adjacent, but they happen to be adjacents that are supplementary because they form this 180 degree angle, okay, if you combine the two. So let's go ahead and create your equation, combine the two, and solve for x. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that down below here so it matches where it's talking about all this. So we have 108 plus the 4x, and all those combined equal 180 degrees. Okay, I'm not going to put the degree symbol for my math equation, though. So separate our workspace. Opposite order of operations. Let's subtract 108 to both sides. That goes away, and we're left with 4x equals 180 minus 108, and you end up with 72. Okay, now we need to go ahead and isolate your variable. So divide both sides by 4, and you end up with x equals 72 divided by 4, and that equals 18. Okay, it's always good to check and see if you're accurate. So if I plug in 18 up here, 18 times 4, so 4 times 18, and we get 72. 72 plus 108 should be 180, and yep, it is, so we're correct. So always good to check, especially if it's a test. All right, example 4. Now we're getting into some real life situations here. So you have a fence. If any of you have ever had a fence like this, you know they get droopy really easy. So these angles are really important to figure out so that you have strength in your fence and in your fence gate specifically. All right, so they want us to solve for x. So the first thing we're noticing is, oh, I have two adjacent angles, but they're sitting on this 180 degree line. Okay, let me make my pen thickness a little bit thicker. So let's go ahead and create your equation. So we have 80, and you could do 10x plus 80 or 80 plus 10x, doesn't matter, but it needs to equal the total of 180. Okay, let's go ahead and solve for x now. Okay, so what do we do first? Well, we take care of any addition, subtraction when we're doing SAD/MERG. Okay, opposite order of operations. So minus 80 to both sides. Okay, and then we end up with 10x equals 100. A nice easy problem to do. Divide by 10, divide by 10, and we end up with x equals 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. Okay, and obviously if we check and plug in a 10 here, 10 times 10 is 100. 100 plus the 80 is 180, so we definitely got that correct. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and try this out. You can hit pause, try it out on your own, and then see how you did. All right, step 1 is just to notice what's going on. I see these adjacent angles, and they're sitting on this 180 degree straight line. Okay, so it means that they're supplementary angles. Okay, so they happen to be adjacent, they're next to each other, and supplementary because they form 180 degrees when you add them up. So let's go ahead and write and solve the equation. We have 132 plus the other angle, which is 5x plus 4. Remember, we get rid of the parentheses. They were just organizational up in the problem. Equals 180 degrees. We can go ahead and solve for this, but first you notice that you have some like terms. So let's combine like terms. I have 132 and I have a 4. Okay, so we're going to always take care of simplifying first before we start moving things around. And simplifying, remember, is distribute if you can, and then combine like terms. So I have 136 plus 5x equals 180. Okay, now we can go ahead and do our normal stuff. So subtract 136 from both sides, and I end up with 5x equals whatever 180 minus 136 is, which is 44. Okay, and I'm questioning whether I did something wrong here. 134, 136, 5x plus 4, 132. Okay, let's just go ahead and play this out here. Okay, so divide both by 5, and you can see why I'm questioning this, because 44 divided by 5 is not going to work perfectly, but let's go ahead and solve it out anyway and just see what happens. And then if we made a mistake, then we can see what we did. So 44 divided by 5 is 8.8. So we're saying x is 8.8. Let's see if that's accurate. Okay, so let's plug in 8.8 because I'm questioning myself here. Okay, just because I'm surprised that it's a decimal. So let's do 5 times 8.8. and we get 44 plus 4 is 48. So this whole side here is 48 degrees, it says, plus 132, and we get 180. So we can trust our math. We didn't do anything wrong, and we're all set. So x actually equals 8 8/10. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get to your applies and try this out before we get to your homework. So this here, we're getting into some percents. And so this is stretching back to some of your percent work that you've done. It says a space shuttle scaffold. So scaffolding is the stuff that you build on the side of buildings when you're doing remodeling. I think you've seen things like that. That's the scaffolding. And it has all these different angles that you see there. That's a little hard to see. Hopefully we can figure out what that says. Okay, it says engineers determined that the measure of angle X, so that must be here, needs to be about 7% less to be more supportive. What is the measure of the new angle? Okay, and so the first thing that we need to do is find out what angle X actually is, and then we need to take 7% less of it. So we want to know what 7% less of that is. So let's go ahead and tackle this. It looks like that says 35, but it's really hard to tell. Okay, so let's play this out as if it says 35, and hopefully I guessed that correctly. What is the measure of the new angle? So first of all, I noticed that these two angles sit on a straight line, so they're supplementary angles. And so when you take the sum of those, they equal 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and calculate that first. So obviously we could do 180 minus 35, or we could do 35 plus the x equals 180, and we can find out what that supplementary angle is. So if we subtract 35 from both sides, okay, we get x equals, let's see, 180 minus 35. So x, according to this, is a 145-degree angle, okay? Now, they're saying that they want that angle to be 7% less in order to be supportive. So what is 7% less of that, okay? So we know that when we're thinking about percentages and removing stuff, okay, if I'm taking off 7%, okay, and I really want to know what the new measure is, think about what that other piece is. I'm taking off 7%, so 100 minus 7 means that this amount is 93%. Okay, so I could find what 7% is and then subtract it, or we could just find what 93% of that is. And remember, we have Desmos that will allow us to quickly solve that, okay? Because basically what we're asking is, what is 93%? And if I swoop that, 1, 2, we're talking what is 0.93 of, or times, 145. Okay, and that's going to give us our answer. Or on Desmos, we can just type 93%, and you can see it says 93% of 145 degrees, and we get that the 7% less measure, or the 93%, is a measure of 134.85. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that. What is the measure of the new angle? The new angle is 134.85 degrees, okay? And that is 7% less, okay, than x. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the check. Okay, you can try this one out. It's a very similar type problem. In the winter, solar panel is set with the angle shown. In the summer, the measure of the angle needs to be reduced. So you do have to pay attention to this, and you should highlight that. Reduce means up or down. Yeah, if you said down, you're right. So we need to go down 46.2%. What is the new measure of the angle in the summer? Okay, if we're reducing it, it's almost like a discount, right, of 46.2%. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out, and you can hit pause and then see how you did. All right, let's go ahead and work through this. So I notice these are supplementary angles because they form a straight line. So that means them together is 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and create your first equation. 115 plus x equals 180, or that's going to work out the same to just taking 180 minus 115. I'm going to separate my workspace here too. All right, so we end up with, what does x equal? 180 minus 115, and we get 65. Okay, so this is truly 65 degrees because x is by itself. It's not some random expression. Okay, so this is 65 degrees. The question, though, doesn't ask what is x. They're saying we want to reduce it by 46.2%. Okay, so again, you have to understand what's going on with percentages. Okay, so if we're taking out of 100%, we're cutting away 46.2%. Okay, we're removing that from the 65. If we're removing that, what is the leftover amount? So, well, let's go ahead and figure that out. 100 minus 46.2. So the leftover amount is 53.8%. Okay, so really, if we take away 46.2, we actually want to find what is 53.8. Okay, or you could find 46.2 and then subtract it. Okay, your answer from 65. But we're going to do the quicker version, which is just finding out what 53.8% is of 65, because that is the new measure. That's our answer. Okay, so we have a couple ways of doing that. Remember, you could swoop, turn it into a decimal, and you could do 0.538 times 65. Okay, and that would tell you your answer. You also could go to Desmos and just say, hey, I want to know what 53.8% of 65 is, and you plug it in, and it tells you that it is $34.97. Okay, so we have 34.97. Okay, and it does tell us to round to the nearest degree, so we got to pay attention to that. Also, nearest degree means we're cutting it here. Okay, nearest whole degree. So instead of 34, would it be 34 or 35? It would be 35. Okay, so the new measure angle is about 35 degrees. Okay, all right, so that's how you tackle those. Let's go ahead and head to the homework. So here's your problems here. Give the measure of the angle that is complementary to the given angle. So they're just giving you those angles there and asking you what is, complementary, not supplementary. I was just drawing a straight line. Okay, we're talking about this right here. Okay, if they form 90 degrees, because remember, complementary means corner or 90 degrees. If we have a 45, what's the complementary angle? Well, the complementary angle is 45 degrees, because 45 and 45 is 90. So if you just know what it is, you can go ahead and write it. If you just want to do 90 minus that other one on your calculator, you can do that. If you want to write it out and actually do 45 plus x equals 90 and solve for x, you're welcome to do that. So you have a couple ways, and I'll let you choose what you're most comfortable with. All right, let's go ahead and pay attention to this, supplementary, so we don't make a mistake here. Supplementary means straight. Here's how you spell straight, IGHT, which means 180 degrees. So what are the two angles that add up to 180 degrees? So now we're looking at this, and if this is x, we know both of these total 180 degrees. So you have a couple options. You could do 180 minus 128. You could do 128 plus x equals 180. If you just through mental math know what it is, you can just write what the supplementary angle is for each of those. But make sure you write it in degrees. Okay. All right. Now we're writing and solving an equation, so you actually have to create the equation to solve for x. Okay, so you can go ahead and play with those. And then we have 10, 11, and 12. oh, we're not going to do all these things down here. I'll walk you through what we're going to do. We have 10, 11, and 12. Where they're real life problems, and you're going to look and determine are they complementary or are they supplementary. Okay, so you can go ahead and create those equations, look back at examples 2 and 4 if you need help with that. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're actually going to, let's go ahead and draw a line here, and we're not going to do these. Okay, but we are going to do 13 and 14. Okay, and so 13 and 14 are just like our apply ones. Okay, I'll do 13 with you, and then you can do 14 on your own. Okay, so 13 says the water ski ramp is set at the angle shown. They want to decrease angle x by 8%. What's the new measure? Okay, so I see that this is supplementary because it makes a straight line. Okay, and so I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick calculation here. 180 minus 150 is 30, so I know this angle is 30 degrees, okay, because 150 plus 30 equals 180. We want to reduce that or decrease that angle by 8%. So remember, if we're cutting it 8%, then that's gone, and what is left over is the new measure. Okay, and so we have 92% of this, the new measure. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, what is 92% of 30? And that's 27.6. Okay, and so the new one is 27.6 degrees, but they want us to round to the nearest tenth of a degree. So nearest tenth, it's already at a tenth, and so my answer is 27.6 degrees. Okay, and really we should go like this and say the new angle is. Okay, all right, so there you go, and then you can imitate that for 14 if you want. So that's your homework. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.